Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Green Dreamers. I'm here with Nate, and this week we thought we would talk about an event coming up in Indianapolis, the Disaster at Crafters.
So this one is being hosted by Chris and Jessica Thompson.
Yep.
We're very excited about this. They always throw a great time.
They've got some nice swag.
Lots of good swag. Very excited about that. So about this time, Tyler and I like to start brainstorming and thinking about what the tournament scene is going to look like.
What deck we want to bring to the tournament. And so today we wanted to talk about a little bit of touch on the process Nate and I go through for deciding and predicting. Oftentimes we're pretty wrong. But
we are never correct.
We try to have a process for predicting not exactly, but generally what we're going to see at the tournament.
Just take what we say with a grain of salt.
For sure.
Well, again, we're not saying we get this right, but we're going to walk through the process that we think is best at creating a refined deck that meets the needs of what the meta will demand of us.
Yeah, and obviously for a tournament that's like a Midwest smaller tournament, it's going to be different than a huge European tournament. It's going to be different than maybe a Californian tournament. And so I think maybe that's the biggest reason why you should take what we're going to say with a grain of salt, because we're not trying to predict what the entire Game of Thrones meta is, but rather just for this specific tournament.
The Disaster at Crafters.
The Disaster at Crafters, yeah.
So something to consider when deciding what deck to bring is we like to think of how it would go up against like big tournament winners. Like if we're here on Jousting Pavilion, look at some more tournaments, right?
Yeah, Jousting Pavilion's a great tool just for kind of staying in the loop for what decks people are playing, because it's updated pretty often. And generally, there's a lot of pretty decent-sized tournaments. You can see even on this page, we've got a couple 30-people tournaments.
So for our purposes, the less than 30-player tournaments, we're just not going to...
Yeah, I think...
We don't really consider that to influence our decision-making on the deck.
Right. I don't think the meta for Disaster at Craster is going to be too cutthroat. But I think what we can say is that tournaments, on the lower range of people typically aren't as cutthroat. And
so you get a lot of different kinds of decks, maybe not as competitive.
Yeah, but the juiciest,
the
juiciest posts are these 100-person tournaments, because these are going to be super cutthroat. And so what's great about Jousting Pavilion is you can see what each deck played against. And unfortunately for this tournament, not everyone's house and agendas put in, but it looks like at the top 32 they got everyone, so you get to see a couple of the matchups and see what did this Martell Banner of the Wolf deck beat. Lannister Fealty, Greyjoy, and then you can kind of apply that to your decks that you're running.
Yeah, this was actually pretty cool because this player was generous enough to post his deck on Thrones DB, so you can actually look and compare whatever deck you might want to bring to.
For sure.
Because now that this information is out there, players will be using it. Maybe they want to try out his deck. They bring it to this tournament. You think, how would my deck fare against this one?
Yeah, Jousting Pavilion and Thrones DB, great websites for just finding out what kind of decks people are playing, see all the new stuff, what are people playing with. So, what Nate and I would do would look at this deck and say, okay, what is this deck trying to do? Trying to mess up big character decks. Well, the Laney Reigns deck is kind of a big character deck. So how would we think of a game plan ahead of time for how to play Laney Reigns against specifically this Martell Banner of the Wolf?
And we might come to the conclusion that we're probably not going to see too many Martell Banner of the Wolf decks at Disaster at Crafters. So maybe we don't tech against it. And again, that's completely your decision.
Yeah.
And it's very important to use all of these resources when coming to a conclusion on what deck to run.
Yeah, I think I know we talked about the switch we made for the Festival of Fools, putting in the Wilding Lord, because that was right after that one big tournament, Battle for the Wall, where the Tyrell Lords of the Crossing deck got 3 of the top 4.
Oh, man.
And Nate and I were pretty scared that we would see it at the Festival of Fools. And so we decided to put in the Wildling Horde as kind of like a tech against it, but nobody was running it.
So
we were completely wrong.
Completely wrong, but it was a good card. As long as you don't take away too much from the deck to fit the meta. I think that's important. You want to have answers for what you might see, but don't have those answers take away too much from what the deck is trying to do.
Yeah, I think one thing to definitely just kind of like know about popular online decks is being able to say, okay, my deck can play against it. This isn't a significant poor matchup against mine, because if it's really popular, then maybe there will be one in the cut. And then if you want to win the tournament, you're going to have to be able to beat it. You know, there's a chance for that. And you can't just rely on getting lucky.
So we definitely use these online resources to consider what the meta might look like. But we also have factors to consider, like new cards.
Yep. I think of the things that you should consider, maybe the online is the least important. Just maybe the afterthought. Make sure you're able to like deal with this stuff. But as far as new cards, you just want to pull up the thing.
Sure.
Okay.
It's just so hard to predict the meta sometimes.
It's really hard.
I think don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like I said, we never get it right. We've been trying to do it for years, and we never get it right. But
But every time we learn a little bit more.
But still, listen to this.
Get a little bit better.
Advice we're given.
So the Night's Watch box, these are new cards that just came out, and so you can kind of just assume people are going to want to play Night's Watch. Maybe with Marius Seaworth, people want to play Bara. And so you have to be able to say, okay, how does my deck do against these? I may see them more often than I would before this box came out. You know, a little bit of a shake-up.
Right. Like when we went to the Festival of Fools tournaments, obviously these were things we didn't have to consider because the Night's Watch cards weren't available.
For sure.
But now the meta has changed, maybe not in a big way, but it has changed, and it's worth considering the changes that we'll see at the tournament.
Right. A plot that may be popular is Retaliation.
Ooh, I do like this plot.
And so maybe take some time to consider how your deck can play against Retaliation. Maybe sit down and say, hey, I know my opponent's going to play Retaliation. Let's say I'm at a little bit of a board disadvantage. What plot can I play to mitigate whatever my opponent's trying to do on that turn? Make sure you have that thought already thought out so you don't have to do it in the moment.
You're more prepared that way.
Yeah,
and
just
it doesn't,
all about being prepared.
Right. If you don't get caught off guard mid-game, you feel a lot more confident.
Maybe you're able to make that Retaliation prediction easier, and then maybe you catch your opponent off guard.
Because again, there's a lot of merit in being able to predict what your opponent is going to play, just having knowledge of the new cards that exist. That's something that's easier said than done, but really taking the time to learn the new cards and thinking, okay, my opponent might have this card in their deck or their plot deck, and I have to play with that in mind.
Right. How much would this play hurt me if my opponent make it? And so, these are just new cards that you should probably just know. Take a look on Thrones DB. Look at... Oh, not my decks. Don't look at those.
Don't look at those decks.
You saw nothing. You saw nothing. All right, maybe you look at a Night's Watch faction and you sort by date. And you say, okay, what are the new Night's Watch decks that people are making? And you just check them out. I will say that, it's Thrones DB, and these are decks that anyone can make, so definitely take them with a grain of salt. This is not new meta stuff. But, I don't know, just see what people are playing with. See what kind of Steward decks. Maybe there's a card in that deck that you didn't think about, that maybe you can think about if you encounter it in a matchup.
So in this regard, you're using, tools like Thrones DB to improve your own deck by expanding your knowledge of what's currently available to you.
Yeah, or just improving your own personal piloting skills by your knowledge of the game.
Speaking of personal piloting skills, I think that, yeah, perfect segue.
Oh,
So
mate.
another thing to always consider, and that, what influences our deck building choices
Yeah.
are personal experiences.
Yeah, and this one may be kind of the most important, I think, because you can make predictions about, oh, these online decks are really popular, or, oh, these brand new cards are shiny. People are going to want to play Night's Watch. But at the end of the day, you really don't know what other people want to do. And especially when it's tournaments like Disaster at Craster's, where it's not necessarily much more of a fun tournament, because there's some pretty good players there. It's not necessarily an easy field.
Well, we go there.
Yeah, we go there. Festival of Fools had some good players. But like there's that element where there's some wild cards. And then on the flip side, at big tournaments, you have the wild card element of decks that metas have worked on for a while.
Right.
Secret decks.
Yes.
I remember at Gen Con last year when DC brought the Martel Wolf deck. And like I had never even considered that deck before. No one knew what was up with that deck. Or Sam Bratz brought Night's Watch Lion. And that was the talk of day one.
That's crazy.
Because he was playing Choke.
With Night's Watch.
Yeah, because White Tree came out, right?
Oh, yeah. That was all the rage. Anyways, personal experiences.
Right. Okay.
So, like, at Festival of Fools, we saw a lot of Lannister Reigns of Castamere. So that's something we want to consider going forward to this new tournament. How would my deck do against Lanny Reigns?
Mm-hmm.
What answers do I have? We saw a lot of, I don't know, Baradom.
Yeah, well, I think we're probably the most qualified to talk about, like, let's say, what the Midwest tournament scene meta is, whatever.
I mean, it's,
Because
Midwest.
we've been to, 4 Store Championships, Festival of Fools, and now we're going to Disaster at Craster's. They've all been relatively the same. A lot of Lanny, a lot of Bara, a lot of, like, Greyjoy mid-rangey decks, some Stark sprinkled in. No Martel, no Night's Watch at all. And I don't know. I feel like the trend's not. I feel like we've been expecting the trend to change at every tournament. We're gonna be like, oh, they have to realize that First Snow of Winter's good. They have to realize.
They're not going to get it, Tyler.
Nobody's gonna get it. So I don't think specifically the meta will shift too much at Disaster at Craster's. Maybe we'll see some more Night's Watch just because of the box, though.
Yeah. So, if you can think, these are the decks I saw the last time I went to this tournament, what could I have improved differently, then compared to now? It's just, in-game knowledge is so much more valuable than, like, secondhand knowledge you pick up off the internet.
Right. But it does have its place, because there's only so much first-hand knowledge you can get.
And that's why it's important to use all of these tools.
Use all the resources you have available to you. Make sure, you get out there, play tournaments, because if you only play one tournament a year, then of course it's going to be hard to, like, predict the meta. You're going to be rusty. You need practice.
Yeah, that's another thing that's very important when getting ready for a tournament is get your reps in with your deck.
Yeah.
Just know how to play it, know what combos you have. Sometimes you're playing it and you're like, oh, this works really well with this other thing. I didn't even think of that.
I 100% agree. I cannot overstate the importance of practicing with your deck and being able to be prepared for all situations when you sit down at the table.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing too much on the fly stuff at the table, because that's just extra pressure. Let's say you've been playing for 8 hours. You're in their last game. You want your deck to be able to be simple enough. You want to be able to have the choices, how to play the deck ingrained into your instincts.
Yeah, if the deck is almost able to run on autopilot, it leaves less room for error that you can make. So, getting your games in, brainstorming. Tyler and I like to spend just a lot of time bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah, that's why we decided to make a YouTube channel, because we hung out every week and just talked about Game of Thrones, and then we're just like, oh, we might as well just record
We might as well just turn on a mic.
Yeah, and try and get some YouTube views.
Yeah, you guys need to subscribe. I think we get like 30 cents by now. Right?
We don't get any money.
We don't get any
get any money.
Wow.
We just get personal satisfaction and a boost to our self-confidence, which we both desperately need.
I was doing it for the money. You think I was
Mates
doing
out.
it? You think
All right,
I was
boys,
doing
welcome
this?
to The Green Dreamer. I'm your host, Tyler. No, but for the tournaments that we've been to in the past couple months, I can say Nate's had infinitely more practice with his decks than me. I've brought a different deck to every single one, and that's kind of my thing a little bit. People, I don't know. Last regional season, the first one, I built a deck when I got there, and then I won it. But that's a bad idea. Don't do that. That's really bad.
Don't.
Like, I got lucky. I got so lucky at that tournament.
I mean, you're a good pilot. We're just sitting here just jerking each other.
We're just jerking. I'm just trying to say practice is really important.
It is important. Don't show up the day of building a deck. I mean, everyone does it, and like I guess you'll do it too. Whatever. But you will be better off like knowing the cards in the deck and how they work together. It just makes sense. You're just going to be better off knowing the deck. Yeah. So if you have the time, just do some test hands. Whatever. How hard is that?
Yeah, even just doing like, here we go. Let's try out A Night's Summer by Jamie ZXIV.
So
you just take your deck, you go draw. I like you to draw all, and then load all the pictures, and then you do 7. And you're like, well, this is a crappy hand. Is it crappy? Yeah, that's crappy. And you're like, let me draw again. And you're like, oh, wow, this is also kind of a crappy hand.
So then you might think, well, why aren't my setups looking that good?
Yeah.
And you can make changes to the deck. Tyler and I have talked before about the AGOT Setup Analyzer, another useful tool.
Another great online tool.
When preparing for a tournament. Just really consider all these different factors.
Right.
I think that's the main point of this episode. We're trying to just prepare for a tournament.
Be prepared. Know what your opponent's decks could be. Be prepared for those. And then know what your own deck is, and be prepared to play your own deck. And I think that's really all there is to it at that point. The day of, don't make too many rash decisions, any last-second flips, because it'll only mess with your thought process of playing the deck.
Go with your gut. I mean,
your gut.
It's as simple as that, folks. Just go with your gut. Be confident. Take your time.
Yeah. It's a marathon.
Right. It's not a sprint.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's enough cliches.
I think that's enough cliches to win a tournament, Nate.
I think you're right. We will hopefully be having a nice episode after the disaster at Craster's. Otherwise, there will be a disaster.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Yeah. I bet we should let's make an episode about the deck we play. We think we have an idea of the deck. But let's not say it because...
not say it, but if our viewers were paying close enough attention, it was spoiled in the episode.
Right. We have said we'll play this deck. Oh, no, you're right. It was spoiled in the episode.
We didn't say that, but it was...
Yeah, all right, whatever. We're giving too much. All right.
Bye-bye.
See you guys. Subscribe, like, give us feedback if you want to.
Questions, comments.
Questions, yeah.
Please.
Concerns. All right. Thanks for watching.